Today, I had the honor to interview with Michael A. Singer, 3 times New York Times bestselling author, Beyond Tethered Soul, The Surrender Experiment, and most recently, Living Untethered. In 1971, he had an inner awakening while working on his doctorate in economics, and later went into seclusion to focus on yoga and meditation. In 1975, he also founded the Temple of the Universe, which became the long-established yoga and meditation center where people of any religion or any set of beliefs can come together to experience inner peace. And the building of which I'm standing in front of was the original building that he built by himself. He is also the creator of a leading software package which transformed the medical practice management industry in the US and founding CEO of a billion-dollar public company, whose achievement has been archived in the Smithsonian Institution. Along with his more than 5 decades of spiritual teachings, Singer has also made major contributions in the areas of business, education, healthcare, and environmental protection. Hi, Mickey.
Hey, Effie.
How are you today?
Ecstatic.
Oh, great. I know you're going to answer that. Well, Mickey, it's such a treat for me because I know you are a really private person. You rarely, do interviews like this. So it feels so special for me to be able to have this opportunity to sit down with you and have a conversation. And really the inspiration for this conversation happened when Lincoln and I spent a little over a month on the ground of Temple of the Universe and was able to enjoy some of your talks. And, we did yoga and meditation a couple of times with Karen too. And I just felt this calling inside of me that just makes me feel like I need to be the conduit to share the messages out to the world. And also specifically for the community that me and 3 other founders founded this year called Aiyu Planet. So in our community, we have folks range from in their 20s or 30s, so younger folks who are beginning to realize there is also a path inside for their own personal transformation and growth, and they're just hungry for teachings and knowledges that you've spent your life's work on. So today, again, I just feel so honored to be able to share this time with you. Would you like to say to the camera and just say hi to the audience?
Hi, everybody. I am more honored than she is. All right. I have a tremendous affinity for people from China. Very, very special. Your history is phenomenal. Your wisdom is phenomenal. You have so many great beings, and you're a very great country. And so I'm honored to have an opportunity to talk to you today.
Thank you so much, Mickey. So really today I want to just have a conversation touching on 3 of your New York best-selling books. I, of course, first read The Surrender Experiment. When I read the book, when I picked up the book, I was still living in New York City, the hustle and bustle in the city. I was working as a consultant at a, business consulting company. And when I picked up the book and I saw the title, The Surrender Experiment, I was like, finally, some book, not talking about go get it, success, achieve, anything you want. So I guess at the time I was searching for almost permission to stop, just feeling like being stuck in a rat race. But as I read the book, it's not really, you're not telling us to stop or to, go out in the woods and, in the solitude and meditate. I actually felt this immense, just commitment towards letting go of yourself and letting go that part of you or the voices in the head that we normally tend to listen to and get frustrated by. So I really just want to begin our conversation with the voices, which you illustrate beautifully in all 3 of your books. So can you begin by just telling us what are those voices and and how significant that is to our personal development?
Sure. That's where my growth started, was one day out of nowhere, don't ask me why, I just started noticing that I was uncomfortable instead of being uncomfortable, and started noticing that there was a dialogue going on in my mind that was not comfortable, generally, all right? Figure out everything can go wrong and what did go wrong and what don't I like and what should I do, et cetera, et cetera. And the difference was, though, that I was noticing this instead of being it. So the first thing I would say about the voice inside your head or that dialogue is everybody has it, unquestionably. But unless you step back, you don't even think you are it. You are it. You know, that's me talking. That's who I am. And I'm trying to figure out what to do and it's arguing different sides and I'm trying, et cetera, et cetera. So the real major step of spiritual growth is to just take a breath, step back and notice that there is a voice talking inside your head. If I always give people practices, I tell them to say hello inside their head over and over again, not outside, but inside, right? And then I ask a simple question, did it do that? And they say, yes, of course it did it, right? How do you know? And they get frustrated, right? I know because I heard it. Who heard it? You just said it. I heard it. Subject, object, right? So all of a sudden you realize it's true. I heard it. Okay, well, what if you're not making it say hello and let it say whatever it wants? Do you notice? Yes. And now that first step back, and that's the first awakening. It's called the witness, objective observation. Krishnamurti called it, right? You step back and you notice, yes, there is a dialogue going on inside my head, and I am aware of that. Okay, so now the question becomes, what do you want to do about that? In some people's case, nothing. You know, just go about your business and continue listening to the voice. There are many of us who have looked at it and said, that's not exactly who I'd like to be. This neurotic person who can't make up their mind and wants this and doesn't want that and trying to connive and figure out how to get what I want. That's all that voice talks about, right? And if you're too close to it, you get sucked in. All right? I don't like that. I don't like what she said. You're not watching that. You're being that. You're trying to figure out what to do about that. All right? When you start to grow spiritually, inwardly, you realize that's just the same voice talking. It doesn't matter what it's saying. It's saying I like it, saying I don't like it, saying do this, don't do this. Oh my God, I can't believe you did that. That's terrible. Whatever it is, it's just a dialogue going on inside your head. You who's listening are not that dialogue. You are the one who's listening and watching it. So that is the beginning of real spiritual growth, where you commit yourself to notice that is not me, and what it's saying has not really helped that much in my life. It's made me uptight. It's made me anxious. It's made me guilty. It made me so on and so forth, right? So how do I learn to live with that? Because it's there, and raise myself to a more beautiful inner state than having to struggle with and work with and listen to that constant dialogue that is it complains all the time. I don't like this. It was raining. Okay, so there's the start of the dialogue about the voice.
Yeah, that's so beautiful. When you mentioned, well, it's almost like, I remember it's either in the Surrender Experiment or Untethered Soul that you describe it as your roommate.
Yeah, the roommate. Right.
Living in your head. And I remember, for this interview, almost didn't happen because of all these voices going on in my mind, because I, of course, when I first spent a couple weeks here and I had that calling, I was like, I want to invite Nikki for an interview. And I kept hearing different voices and be like, no, you're not important as Oprah, right? Or, there's also voices saying like, go for it. You need to try harder, right? And I don't know if you still remember, I actually asked you that question during one of your talks. And I asked you, which one is truth? Which one should I be listening to? And you just look at me directly in my eyes and you said, none of it means neither. Yeah. Wow. What a moment. I still remember vividly. And even now, I just remember this wash of peace and surrender, right? And that's when it clicked for me what it really means to surrender.
Yes.
So in your book, Surrender Experiment, you talked about, here I quote, the rules of the experiment were very simple. If life brought events in front of me, I would treat them as if they came to take me beyond myself. If my personal self complained, I would use each opportunity to simply let him go and surrender to what life was presenting me. This was the birth of what I came to call the Surrender Experiment. So beautiful. And of course, many people who, pick up the book and, I can imagine people would be looking at the word surrender and immediately thinking something like, you know, like when I first took the book, right? I gotta stop. I gotta just let whatever life take me to, you know, whatever that's next. And you also said in the book yourself, you said, you know, surrender, what an amazingly powerful word. It often engenders the thought of weakness and cowardice. But in my case, it required all the strength I had to be brave enough to follow the invisible into the unknown. So I want to ask you in person, so what are you surrendering to during the surrender experiment?
Right. People very much, for a while, misunderstand what's going on. Right? It takes multiple readings, and it takes some of your life experience. Mm-hmm. You're not surrendering life. Let's start that way. You're not a renunciate. You're not denying doing, working, experiencing, and so on. That is not surrender. Okay, that's something very different. That's hiding. That's quitting. That's not surrender. Right. What you're surrendering is your inner reaction to what's happening outside. That reaction is based upon your past experiences. You were programmed with what felt good, what didn't feel good, et cetera, et cetera. So when the outside world unfolds, you're looking through the veil of that programming, right? And it doesn't mean you're seeing what's actually happening. You're seeing your reaction, your psychological reaction to what's happening. That's what you surrender. You surrender that inner reaction that says, I don't like this. I don't like what you're saying. I don't like I don't even know what the heck you're saying. It's just hit me wrong. Understand that? It hit a part of me that sounded like my mother or my father or the preacher or my first boyfriend or girlfriend, right? And then that's what I'm reacting to. So I'm not interacting with life. I'm interacting with myself, with my reaction to life, okay? And eventually it gets very clear that that's what you're doing, right? Is you're just looking through the veil of your past experiences, how they built up inside of you of preferences and fears and anxieties and desires. All of that stuff is built up. And then when the world comes in, it doesn't come back to you, the experiencer. It goes through that veil. And what you're experiencing is not the truth. It's never the truth. It's never the truth until you get very, very clear. And that stuff, you know how to step aside from that stuff. You don't know what somebody's saying. You don't know why they're saying it, but your mind tells you do. That voice, this and I know what she meant by that. She was lying to me. She doesn't look like it, but she's lying. And you ask her specifically, did you really mean that? Yes, she's still lying. It's like, what are you doing in there? Right? How do you know anything? Right? And so that's what you surrender. You surrender the reactive energy of your own veil, of your own psyche, which is not the truth. It's just what you picked up during your life, the different experiences you had. And that's a major part of going deeper into the spiritual teachings. You have had experiences your whole life. Like somebody could argue with me and say, well, my experiences are important. No, they're not. What do you mean? Everything you experienced, every moment you experienced that you were missing 99.9999999% of everything that's going on. So how could that be important? If you'd looked the other way, you have a different experience. If you got stalled and didn't make a meeting, that had a different experience. Anything that happened, you have a different experience. So what's so important about the experience you actually had? It's just 1 in a trillion, 1 in a zillion, right? And then you take those and put them together and weave them into a self-concept that I'm important. This is what I know. This is what's true. How do I know? I've experienced this. Yeah, but what didn't you experience? You didn't experience 7 billion things at the same time. Why is the one you experienced more important than the one you didn't experience? I'm making answer me, right? Why would it be more important? It's just an experience, right? Aren't there experiences going on everywhere at the same time? Why are they not just as important as the experience you had? Makes sense? You understand that?
Yeah.
All right?
Yeah.
But you think because you had it, it's the beginning and end of all wisdom, the beginning and end of all knowledge, beginning and end of all truth. All right? And you weave your experiences together into this psyche, into this veil that says, I know what's going on. Right? Like I said, if you had a different experience, you would say something else was going on. Every single experience would create a different you. And so eventually you become humble enough to realize this is a problem, not a solution. The fact that I collected this garbage, this meaningless moment in life. You understand that? Like there are people that if one moment in their life didn't happen, they'd be totally different people. You understand that? If one person didn't die, if one person didn't say something, if one person said hello when they didn't say hello, if one person, anything, their whole life is different. Well, that's ridiculous. You understand that? That's ridiculous. There's so many things going on. Why does that one moment have the right to define your entire life? A wise person says it doesn't. It's just what happens because my psyche gets fixated on the experience that I had. And you're going to find out that then what happens is the world comes into you and it hits that stuff. And that's why the voice is talking inside your head. It talks about that. And so eventually you get to the point where you realize that is what you're surrendering. Not renouncing, not suppressing, just being wise enough to realize that talk inside your head is not the beginning and end of all knowledge. In fact, it's not even close. Right? It's just, it happens to be the sum total of your learned experiences, which are nothing. Right? I keep asking, I know people can't handle it. If those are your learned experiences, what did you miss? Everything else.
Wow.
And they would make a different you. That's the true humility of a spiritual person. Right? If you had different experiences, you're not thinking the way you're thinking. All right? Therefore, those thoughts are not all that important, not that meaningful. Okay? And so you start realizing that your reaction, your reactive energy is your ego. Your reactive energy is just this little world that you built inside. Okay? And at some point you realize that's a problem. And that's why I don't like things. I don't like you. Why? You're blonde. I had trouble with blondes before. That's ridiculous. I don't like you because you're Chinese. I don't like you because your nationality, because your religion. You hear me? I don't like you because you don't have a religion. It's like you'll just end up with all these opinions and preferences and fears and hopes and dreams, and they will destroy your life. Because you're not interacting with life. You're interacting with yourself. Okay?
Wow.
That's what you let go of. Not easy, but you start realizing, if I don't do that, how can I have peace? How can I love? How can I have love? You think you love somebody until they does one thing you don't like. Or you think they did one thing. Or you think they might do one thing. Do you understand? That's enough, isn't it? You think they might someday do the thing that somebody else hurt you, and so I can't open to you.
Yeah.
It's ruining your life.
Yeah.
They're unable to experience life, to live life, to express yourself, because you have this veil in the way. That's what surrender means. So when it says, I'm going to let life unfold and use it to let go of me, right? That doesn't mean I say yes to everything life does. That doesn't mean I don't make decisions or anything like that. Yeah. It means I don't make them based on that veil. I know that veil doesn't know what it's talking about. It thinks it does because it's the sum of its own learned experiences. If you give a computer certain data, right, it will always come up with the same answer. If the data doesn't change, feed it. But I asked, it was a top computer. I asked it 50 times. It came with the same answer. Must be right. No, you didn't change the data. If you change the data, it'll give different answers. Put more data in. Understand that? That's what's going on inside of us. Is we just have the data of the minuscule experiences that we had, and then they seem so right every time. I know it to the bottom of my being. Of course you do. It's all you know, because you didn't have any other experiences. Have one more experience, you'll change your mind.
Wow. Yeah.
So that's what surrender is, right? It's not surrendering life, right? But you use life. Why? Because it's unfolding. You're going to interact with life one way or another. Follow me? Things are going to happen.
Yeah.
Use that to let go of this garbage that you collected inside that thinks it knows everything and it doesn't know anything.
Yeah. So it's not life you're surrendering.
That's
it's
right.
really the resistance
That's correct.
that one encounters if something goes slightly not the way that you think that you didn't like, or, you know, personal preferences, right? That's what you're surrendering.
Right. And it's neat. You're deep, and you've been here for a while, so I've gotten to know you. But I like to talk to everybody as though you're deep, all right? You're not even surrendering preferences. That's difficult for people to understand, right? Why? If you want something and you surrender it, that's renunciation. That's another form of struggle. If you don't want something, right, and you resist it, you don't resist it, right? You're still having trouble. What you find eventually, what I got is you let go of, surrender the reason you have preferences.
Wow.
You don't get rid of the outside world that's causing you to react to preferences. You don't ultimately think, I'm going to strip away my preferences. All right. That's just a struggle. Now your struggle is not outside, your struggle is inside. First the struggle is how do I get my preferences? Then the struggle is how to get rid of my preferences. Right? No. Why do you have preferences? Preferences are not natural. Preferences are not natural. right? The weather is what it is. You can handle it. It's raining. It's not raining. It's sunny. It's a little hot. You can handle those things, right? Somebody says something. You're not sure what they said, right? Why do you prefer, right, that they apologize when you don't even know what they said? But why do you have preferences? And what you're going to find out is you have preferences because you stored problems inside of you from the past. There's all kinds of situations that happened to you, experiences in your life that were not comfortable. You didn't handle those well. In fact, you said, I can't handle this. Okay? And then you pushed it away. Right? Now, if anything reminds you of that, you have a preference against that. If something happened that you stored that you liked and want to happen again, you have a preference toward that. The cause of your preferences are these blockages that you stored inside from your past that you couldn't digest, that you couldn't release. Like, you don't have preference about all kinds of things. You don't have preference about the white lines on the road. You don't have preference about what tree you drove by. You don't have preferences about who's walking down the street in New York, unless it reminds you of something that was comfortable or uncomfortable inside of you. Now, wait, I don't want it to go. All right? So we're going deep. It is not about fighting with life or renouncing life. It is not about fighting with yourself, although you will go through those stages. All right? It is about being far enough back to realize the mind and the heart are reacting the way they are because of all this garbage I've stored inside myself, the events that I couldn't handle, that I couldn't process. All right? So it's about letting go of that. There's the letting go. Right? You're not letting go of life. You're not fighting with your ego. Right? Your ego is a natural reaction to the stuff you stored inside that you couldn't process during the day.
Wow.
It's not very far from Freud. Right? You have suppressed things that bothered you. I guarantee your mind is talking about those, and they're coming back up, and you have preferences for them or against them, depending on whether you like them or not. That's where it comes from. So you're not surrendering life. You're not surrendering your reactions to life, in a sense, your preferences, right? You are at the deepest level. You're looking inside and saying, wait a minute, I live on a planet for a few years, and I'm going to leave. I can handle that. Give me a break. That's the nicest planet around. No one's found anything even close, all right? Why can't I handle and enjoy the experiences that are taking place in life? Some of them are comfortable. Some of them are not. That, that's the way life is, okay? Do I have to store the bad stuff so that now everything looks bad? And I'm afraid of everything. And I'm desirous about things that make me feel good. No. I am able to surrender that process, that stuff I stored inside. You're going to find out that preferences naturally fall away. Like they just fall off. Let's say someone's trying to date somebody. They're lonely. They want to meet somebody. All right. But they judge. They judge every single thing. He slurps his soup. He doesn't sit right. There's a thing. I'm embarrassed of this. He wore a bow tie. Oh my God. It's like millions of things you judge the person about. How can you find somebody? How can you love? How can you respect somebody? Right? It's all basically based on this garbage that you stored inside. If you were to let that go, all of a sudden you find out relationships are simple. What does it mean? You feel love inside and you share it. It doesn't matter if somebody slurped their soup. It's funny, right? It doesn't close you. It closes you because it hits that garbage you stored inside.
Wow.
So ultimately, we went very deep now, ultimately, what you're surrendering and letting go of is the garbage that you should not have stored inside from the past anyways. The past is over. You shouldn't be storing it in there. Now you're a more open being, more capable of experiencing love, beauty, inspiration, and you share that with the world. And life becomes totally different.
Yeah. Wow. I just had another clicking moment for me because, when I first learned about all these spiritual teachings and, with different people also, and I realized, yes, I have this ego thing that's probably like producing all those voices and sounds. Sure. And I immediately start to hate on that. Yeah, it's like, why do I have this ego and I need to fight with it? But what you just said is so beautiful. It's not about hating that ego thing, right? It's also natural that it has all this, generated all this preferences and garbages because of all, and in your newest book, and you went very deep, and I think it's the samskara that you talked about in that book. Yeah, so wow.
If the Buddhists say, work at the root. That's what that means to me. Don't work on the outside world. That's not the problem. Don't work on the fact that the ego is reacting because you stored it inside of you. Work on why there is an ego of that level, why there are preferences. And you'll see the root is that you stored all this stuff throughout your life. And now it is formulating the way you think, it's formulating that stuff. And if you let that, I'm not talking about intellectual stuff. Intellectually, that's what your mind is for, to develop things and study things and learn things, right? But that's not, it's not there to figure out how I need everybody and everything to be so I can be okay, which is what it's doing.
Exactly,
okay?
Yeah.
The mind itself is not a problem. It's what you're doing with it that's a problem. Mind is a very great thing. But if you take that powerful mind and focus on yourself and say, I'm not okay. Why? Because I stored all this garbage inside of me. You know what I said? The more I can't not say it. If you store every single thing inside of you from the past that you are not okay with, you're not going to be okay. You just stored all this not okay stuff in there, right? So the root is, are you willing to work on yourself to every day let go of the garbage that you stored inside and try to interact with life with a more open way and use life to show you where you're still caught. That's what you were talking about, the surrender experiment.
Wow.
That the moments in life come in front of you, right? And you see, oh my God, I didn't realize that was in there, right?
So it's also a discovery process, right?
Absolutely.
We can't just know. I love this attitude that you have, right? Like, it's exciting. For me, it's like, oh my gosh, I want to know what is all that stored inside of me, like right now. Of course, you talked about, when someone decides to go on this journey, you also go through phases, right? And one of the moments that struck me the most in the surrender experiment was early on in the book, and you talked about, when you went to California, yoga and meditation retreat center, and you chose at the beginning to wear that silence sign, right? So not to interact with other people. And then later on, you had this moment where you said to yourself, Nikki, it's okay, you can come out now. And to me, I remember just having tears in my eyes reading that part. To me, that sounds like a very significant moment for you to begin to shift from seeking, solitude and deep, deep meditation to find fulfillment to a path of servant leadership. So I'm curious for you, does that, do you think that's like a turning point for you to, shift your kind of spiritual focus and growth?
I didn't have a teacher or teachings when I started, okay? I had a spontaneous, deep spiritual experience. Not spontaneous, I was meditating, but it didn't belong to someone who had just started meditating, right? But it happened anyways. And that became a very, very strong one-pointed focus in my life. Because the experience was so beautiful. And it's the first time in my life I realized there was something really beautiful inside, right? Way more beautiful than anything outside, right? And I was committed to doing anything I could to get the noise out of the way and go back to that place of complete peace and total well-being, all right? And so I took the path of solitude and the path of silence and the path of renunciation and the path of all that kind of stuff for a while, right? And what you're talking about is one of the moments, the peak moment, important moments where I realized, that's not going to do it. It's not a matter of just being the most disciplined you can and not doing the most that you can and not interacting with them and just being alone so you can go inside, right? There's at that time I wasn't as wise as I am now, but the answer is there's stuff in there that needs to be purified. You're not going to just shove it away, okay? And so life and the interaction with life is your teacher. If that's what your commitment is, to grow through this stuff, right? Life will bring it to you and you'll be forced to work with yourself. It's not that you get to do it yourself. You're not going to be able to do it yourself.
Yeah.
Your mind is not your teacher. Your mind is not a guru.
Wow. So life really
because your mind will always be tainted toward what you want. You say that? Like somebody once said to me, well, how do you pick a guru? How do you pick a teacher? Right? You have to be very, very selective and so on. Who's selecting? The part you're trying to get rid of is the part you need your teacher for, is the part that's judging the teacher.
Wow.
Right? All based on what? Based on your past experience, what you think a teacher should be like. They should never yell. They should always be quiet, right? They should meditate an awful lot, okay? And they should never get sick. Oh, teachers never get sick. They're pure and they never get sick, right? And they should age really. I mean, come on, give it a break, all right? What you're doing is taking your concepts, which knows nothing, because you know nothing. You're admitting you know nothing. You said, don't want a teacher. And you're then projecting that onto someone. You're not going to grow, all right? Life is a phenomenal teacher. Why? You have no control over it. You try to, but you don't, right? Life is going to unfold. And you either decide, I'm going to fight it, I'm going to manipulate it, I'm going to make it be what I want, or I'm going to use it to purify my stuff. I'm going to use it to let go of myself. And that's what a guru is for. It's what the real teachers are for, right? Is letting go of your stuff. So.
Yeah. And I remember, you know, in the book and several different places you talked about how your mind or your, you know, the voice in your head says one thing and your lip says, for example, your voice says no and your lip says yes. Is that really what it is? Like just choosing to say yes to whenever you feel the discomfort and the resistance?
No. It has to be deeper than that. You have to look and see, why am I resistant to this, right? If a drug dealer walks up to you and sits there and says, here's some heroin, right? You don't say yes, right? In fact, you feel resistance, right? You feel no, is it, right? So that just because you feel the resistance doesn't mean you say yes, right? You have to look deeper inside and you have to see what's your motive here, okay? Are you afraid? Do you feel desirous? So if a drug dealer walks up to you, like I'm sure it's true of you, and sits there and says, here's some heroin, you're not afraid and you're not desirous. You're clear. No, no, I don't want to go there, right? Why? I don't have an answer. I just don't want to go there. I don't have to answer you, right? And that's not being mean. It's just you're clear, right? So if you come into a moment and something has been asked of you, all right, or told for you to do or not do, okay, and you see this ego jump up, right? It's not terrible to not do what it said. It's not terrible to train it a little bit, you know, and sit there and just nicely, I didn't used to be nice, but nicely say to him, right, it's okay. It's okay. We can do this. I know you don't want to, but there's no basis for that. This is helping somebody. This is a service. We can do this. And then you say yes. Okay, that's a gentle way to do it. I didn't use. I used to fight with them. All right, but that doesn't help. You should not fight with yourself. Right? You raise yourself. And so, but let's say something else happens, and he says, "Oh my God, I really want to do this. Oh my God, I'm so attracted to this." And you look, and you say, "Yeah, but you're married," or something like that. And you just say, "Okay, calm down, right? We're not going to go there." And the next thing you know, you're saying no to something that desires you wanted, or you're saying yes to something that you were a little afraid of, or you just didn't want to bother, and you're letting go. It's an act of letting go of that part of you. So that's what it's about. Are you aware that you're letting go of a part that you don't need, that you don't want? Not that you say yes or no every time.
Exactly. It's almost, I think I'm also hearing active reflections.
Oh, well, yes, but it doesn't take thought. That's a very important thing. It's like people think I need to think about this. There is no thought in this process. There's clarity.
Wow.
You're there, you're aware, and you see what's going on. You can see what's going on. Don't give me that. All right? I mean, there's a lot of noise you can't see. But if you work with yourself a little bit, you start to get your footing in there, you can see he really wants this, but he's going to make it sound like he doesn't, so that I'll do it. All right? And he starts rationalizing, right? This isn't so bad because we're supposed to grow. And the teachings are that you're supposed to be willing to go. That's a bunch of BS. And you know it, and you look at it, and you see, or you start seeing truth inside. This is a big one. Right? No, I'm saying, don't even face in a direction you don't want to end up. Don't even face in a direction you don't want to end up. Right? Why would you? It's not what you want to do. So why are you playing around? Okay? So you sit there and something's going on inside of you and you want to do it. Or you don't want to do it. Right? And you do what I call turn your head. What I mean, you just kind of turn away from this wisdom that you've gained. That knows this is not where I want to go.
Wow.
But you don't want to see it. You don't want to hear that. Right? That's when you're not growing.
Wow.
You understand? So now you see what I'm talking about. You're in there and you're being a wise being, little by little, to raise yourself. Then people say, well, what if I really didn't see it? Then that's fine. And you do the best you can, and you fall, or you get up, or something happens, and you go through the consequences of your actions. That's called getting taught. So life's your teacher now. It's not just challenging you, it's teaching you. But it better be that you actually didn't see it. Not that you saw it and ignored it. You know what I'm saying? If you want to grow, you better be honest with yourself. Forget about anybody else. You start with being honest, brutally honest with yourself.
Wow.
Right? I'm not playing around. Okay? I want to go past this, and giving into it or running away from it is not getting past it. But you just do your best.
Wow. Yeah. You know, in our community, we, a lot of our members in our community, they, you know, on the outside, you could say that they have, you know, accumulated some success, sort of the worldly success. Like, for example, they've attended, you know, really great schools and getting the education, and they're working, right? And a lot of members, especially members who read your books, and they're like, wow, look at Mickey, right? And he also achieved worldly success, right? He founded 2 successful companies, and one of which became public, generating billions of revenues. And they're looking at you as a role model in that sense. But you somehow also integrate your spiritual practice with your worldly development. So I'm curious how you managed to do all of that. Well, I know you didn't manage, but it, you know, came about. To me, at least, it's a beautiful integration. 2 paths. It's never, here's what you do as a company CEO, and here's what you do meditating on your spiritual practices, right? It's 2 in 1.
Well, I'll take your exact words, right? I love when people, the words that we use are amazingly good teachers, right? So you said integrated your spiritual practices into your worldly work. Right? No, that's not what happened, right? I integrated what was happening in the world with my spiritual practices. Like I was already fully committed to the spiritual path and never budged off of that, okay? That doesn't mean people can't do it the other direction, but I'll make that clear, right? So there isn't a single thing I did in business that I was doing as business. I was doing it as spiritual growth. I was doing it as what I told you. Life, business is a very good teacher. You understand that? So life is unfolding, and you're, to whatever degree you are, you're centered, and you're not willing to sell out for money. You're not willing to sell out for relationships. You're not willing to sell out for success. Not selling anything. You're interacting to the best of your ability to serve the moment that's unfolding in front of you. I don't care if it's a relationship. I don't care if it's business. I don't care if it's whatever it is, all right? That's who you are. That's what you're doing, all right? And if you do that and not make it, I want this, and I'm struggling to make my spirituality fit inside this business. No, your spirituality doesn't fit inside the business because there's no difference in spirituality and business. Period. There's no difference between relationship and spirituality or business. You understand that? They're all just life. And so you're centered enough to realize that. And now life is coming at you, and it's a business. Serve it. Do the best that you can to do the best you can at business. Why? In order to let go of the parts of you that doesn't want to, or is afraid, or gets uptight because somebody doesn't agree with you, or anything, everything in business is a teacher. You understand that? If you're a boss, your relationship with your employees. If you're not a boss, your relationship with a boss. Every single thing is about spirituality. It's all about taking that part of your being that you wouldn't be interacting with if you're sitting in a house meditating, but now you have to deal with that part of your being. You understand that? Okay? So how are you going to deal with that from a spiritual point of view? And that's what you're doing. It's all spiritual. It's all based on spirituality. There are no other concepts or views or opinions or preferences except I'm liberating myself every moment of my life to raise myself to the highest state that can be inside, and then giving that to whatever in front of me. That's the motive and purpose of your life. There's no other motive. There's no competition. It all fits if you do that. Okay? Anything, even the really sensitive things. You're a woman in business. We know what can happen to different things, right? So instead of, getting angry and closing down and judging and all kind of junk, you look at that part of you. Because, men have that part too. Like children have that part. Everybody's got that part. It's just not the same topic. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. But it's the same thing, right? And you look and you say, how can I deal with this? I'm not saying it's not happening, right? How can I deal with this that sets an example of how there can be more peace and harmony in this world. Right? And you start to experiment with, okay, somebody mistreated, didn't treat with respect or something like that, right? Right. What's the best way to deal with that? Because I'm a spiritual being, I'm able to maintain peace even though a part of me is upset, a part of me is offended. Okay, now, what can I do? What can I do to raise me, raise everybody else? How can I use this to the benefit of everything?
Wow.
That's not denying that it happened. You're not stepping aside and not being part of the program, right? You're actually being wiser than the person that's out there screaming or throwing rocks.
Yeah.
Which has never done any good. But it doesn't mean you're not interacting. You see what I'm saying? It doesn't mean you're not protesting. It doesn't mean you're not doing what you can to raise it. But you're not doing it because you couldn't handle it. You're doing it because you could handle it. Now what can I do to help? That's how to be an activist. That's how to do things.
Wow. So it's serving the path in front of you versus finding the reasons why not to.
or finding a way to make it be the way you want. Because you're not okay. That's the key right there. I'm not okay. I need to manipulate and control everybody and everything in front of me, right? So that it bees the way that makes me feel better and doesn't make me feel worse. As opposed to, I am okay, and I'm not totally okay, but I'm working on myself to be okay. That's right? You're always growing, right? Yeah. I am okay. Now, I'm the best person to deal with the situation because I'm not reacting with all the negativity, right? I'm able to bring something higher to the situation. Yeah. So that's why I say it's not that you're renouncing life. You're not renouncing life. You're letting go of the party that's making a mess in life.
Yeah.
Well, imagine this. What if everybody did what we're talking about? Everybody, the leaders, everybody. There'd be no wars. There'd be no anything. You heard John Lennon, imagine all the people. That ain't going to happen with that garbage going on inside.
Yeah. Yeah. And, also in our community, we have, discussions around, having boundaries or, for example, a lot of people believe that having boundaries is essential or critical for your professional and personal well-being. But of course, in your teachings, and I get a sense that that's actually still closing you off.
Yeah. Everybody define your boundary as. Everybody defines their boundaries based on their stuff. You understand that? Like I always say the thing, it used to be that a gentleman would open a door for a lady. That used to be a thing, right? Now you have women's lib, you have people like that, and they say, I can open my own damn door. What's the matter with you? You think I'm, right? And they get insulted because you open the door. How does anybody know, right? So all of a sudden, a boundary, where's that boundary? Which is right. Your boundaries are what you have problems with inside. Correct?
Wow.
All right? And so everybody's got different...
Hard to admit, but yes.
Oh, well, of course it is, all right? So everybody has different boundaries, right? So I'm Jewish, all right? There are anti-Semites out there. I know that, okay? Where do I draw my line, right? If somebody looks at me funny, right? Do I say something? If somebody makes a comment, right? A damn whatever, right? Something like that. Where is it? Well, my line's going to be different than somebody else's or some this or that. Like, so your boundaries are being set by that which you're able to handle. If you can't handle it, I'm not putting up with that anymore, right? Like, there are people who make it through a marriage problem. I've met many of them that are on the verge of divorce, okay, because of different behavior or different things like that, and they make it through. How do they make it through? Not by forcing these boundaries. Understand that? What you did was not acceptable, and I can't forgive that. Now, that doesn't do it, right? It's like they say, okay, into every life some rain must fall, and I can deal with this. I can deal with this and not let it ruin our relationship. Well, isn't that nicer?
Yeah.
All right? But that doesn't mean that there are not natural unfoldings where the relationship ends. It's just it's not because I'm reacting or I'm not forcing a boundary. It just naturally doesn't fit anymore. It unfolds. All right? And so as much as possible, you use life to let go of yourself. Okay? Now, you heard me, I talked last time. If there's physical abuse, right? I don't even call that a boundary. That's a no-brainer. Your body is a gift that was given to you. Nobody has the right to physically abuse your body, period, right? So, that's a hard stop, but not because I've decided, right? It's just a appropriate. It's dharmic, right? It's just the appropriate thing. Is you don't have the right to, he or she doesn't have the right to do it, and you don't have the right to let it happen. You understand that? Okay? And so I don't want to call that a boundary. All right? It's just basically a natural unfolding of the process of life. When you start dealing with psychological stuff, I don't like what you said, I don't like what you wore, I don't like this, I don't like what you're thinking, right? Now you're building artificial boundaries inside yourself that will lock you off. You know what those boundaries are? Places that you're hiding that you can't, nothing can come in, and nothing can go out either.
Wow.
You understand that? You can't express yourself. You can't. So as much as possible, extremes are hard to talk about. If it's extreme, go for it, work with it, all right? But that's not what people are talking about with boundaries. They're talking about, I have a way I like things to be, and I have the right to have them be that way, and you just crossed over that boundary. You're not going to have very good relationships. Because everybody's different than you.
Yeah.
And you're busy judging. Right? So
wow.
I'm not talking about a hard throw it away, but let's get a little more open. It's all about openness. It's all about, there's a life on this planet. It's unfolding in front of you. Can you enjoy it? Can you live with it? Not if you build these hard boundaries. It has to be exactly the way I like it.
Yeah.
Makes sense?
Because you're closing even more off of that.
That's correct.
99%, 999 that you haven't experienced.
You can't even have you wouldn't even, not willing to have your own experience. Forget the ones you're not having.
Wow. Yeah.
At some point, you limit it down to nothing. I told you that my favorite word is, you know what you've collected in there over the course of your life? It's statistically insignificant. Compared to how much is going on, not just in your town, how much is going on compared to what you experience at any one moment. You see that? Well, what about the Earth? What about the planets? You don't know squat. You never experienced anything. It's truly statistically insignificant what you've gathered in there. Now let's build some boundaries based on it. Let's have opinions, preference, hopes, dreams, concepts, views, manipulate everything. That's why there are wars. That's why everything's a mess. Because everybody had different experiences. They all have different concepts of what they want going on, and they're out there fighting with the moment unfolding in front of them.
Yeah.
That's sad. When it can be beautiful. Doesn't mean the stuff's not happening, but you can handle it and deal with it at a much higher level.
Yeah. So I think we talked a lot about the voices and the thoughts. In your third book, you also touched on emotions too, which is, our higher self sort of witnessing and experiencing. And in the book, there's a, beautiful paragraph I just wanted to quickly quote here. Many intellectuals just want to keep it suppressed because it is much too sensitive and reactive. They would rather live in the mind because they have more control there. Somebody hurts you, you feel an uncomfortable emotion, you go right to the mind and rationalize it away. I quote this particular one because we also have discussions going on in our community talking about exactly how do we sort of handle emotions when it happens, right? And I often hear people either say, I'm going to manage my emotions, control them better, or, people will just say, I'm too afraid to lean into my emotions because I might get lost in it. So in your opinion, or sort of in the practice of surrender, what would be a sort of a healthier way to experience emotions?
Exactly like you handle the wind. So let's take the two things you just talked about, right? I'm going to purify these emotions, keep them away. All right, that's like saying, I don't want wind blowing across my face. Well, what if it is? I'll hold up a 4x8 piece of plywood. Okay, well, you're going to get very tired, and your entire life will be devoted to holding up that plywood because you can't handle the wind blowing across your face. All right? I'm afraid of it. I'm afraid that if I let it in too close, right, it will hurt me and I'll get lost, right? That's like saying, I'm afraid of the wind, right? Well, what's the right way to handle wind? Nothing. You let it blow past you. Wind is just blowing past you. I don't understand. Who said you're handling it? You let it blow past you. What happens when it blows past me? It's gone. It blew past you. What happens again? You let it blow past you. In other words, you don't have to resist. You don't have to control. You have to be afraid. You have to make decisions. You literally sit there and say, wind has the right to exist, and I am able to handle experiencing the wind. I don't have to do anything. What do I have to do to experience it? Nothing. Doership is about not experiencing it or making sure it's not there, right? Otherwise, okay, that's what emotions are. There are natural emotions because you have all this stuff stored inside of you, right? It's trying to release. That's what all that emotions are, is that blockages trying to release. It's all stuck down there. It's energy that needs to release. All right, fine. Welcome it. Here it comes. But I feel concerned to meet this person, right? Fine. Let it go. What do you mean? Let it blow past you. Don't control it. Don't fight it. Don't not like it. Just say, this is normal human stuff, right? Fear and anxiety and that kind of stuff. Let it come up and see if you can breathe through it. Now, you won't be able to do it at first because you stored that stuff down there because you couldn't handle it. And now you can't handle it when it comes back up either, all right? So you know what I teach. Very gentle. Start with the tiniest things in the world. The fact that it's raining and you're concerned that you might get wet, okay, or something like that, all right? Or you might be late to get somewhere, right? And all these emotions are coming up. Well, they're not helping anything. You understand that? They're not going to make it not late. They're not going to make nothing, all right? Therefore, I would say, you're business people, right? The cost-benefit analysis is 100% cost, 0 benefit. But we don't tend to make those decisions in business, do we? Okay? But it really is 100% cost to have this going on and they're bothering you. There's no benefit to it, none. It's not rational, okay? Start with the small stuff and say, okay, I'm going to practice letting go. I'm going to practice letting it blow past me. You won't be able to do it with the big stuff. You won't be able to do it with the middle stuff to start with. But you can do it with the small stuff, right? It starts to come up and you look at it and say, no, come on, we can handle this, right? Keep your hands to yourself. You have inner hands that manipulate things in there. Busy doing, right? Don't. Just relax. The key is relaxation. Resistance is the opposite of relaxation. Relaxation is the opposite of resistance. You can't resist while you're relaxing. You understand that? Resistance requires tension and fighting and so on. So when it comes up, little things, they come up, practice letting go. Practice just relaxing. If the hands start to move, just relax them. Don't fight them, just relax. And see if you can just let it pass by. And you can. If it's small enough, you can let it pass by. Understand that? Okay? And you start with the small stuff. And then you'll be practicing. Just like practice piano or practice anything else, all right? Practicing letting go. Practicing letting the emotions exist. Don't suppress them. Don't fight them. Don't hate them. The little ones, let them come. Let them pass. And you're going to find out, my God, I can do that. And I'm happier. Of course you are. You didn't make a big deal out of nothing. You understand that?
Yeah.
Right? So when I did the interview with Oprah in the new book, she said her favorite line in the new book was, the moment in front of you is not bothering you. You're bothering yourself about the moment in front of you. Let's make sure you get that. The wind is not bothering you. You're bothering yourself about the wind. The fact that your hair got a little frizz in the humidity, right, is not bothering you. You're bothering yourself about it. Do you understand that?
Yeah.
If you didn't bother yourself about it, it's not bothersome, is it?
Yeah,
okay.
Absolutely.
All right. That's the key. That's what you do with emotions. You let them pass.
Yeah.
And eventually they all will.
And I can't, my mind is, I noticed this is my mind talking, like, okay, so where do they go then? So I let the emotions pass.
Yes.
And then just pass through me, right? And then I'll just
pass through your conscience. Well, where does the wind go? I purposely used the word wind on purpose. Where does the wind go? Where does the river go when it hits the ocean?
Wow.
This passes through.
Wow. Yeah. And also I think in the book, and you use the analogy of the sunset too, right? And just like watching a sunset.
It comes all the way in. If you are open, it all comes all the way in. Merges back into the experience of self, into the experience of being, and feeds you. You become a greater being because, like the ocean is greater because the river flowed into it.
Wow.
Right? Okay? You're greater because this came up and passed through you, and you learned from it, and it became part of you. It doesn't be mental, right? And then the next happens, and eventually you become this open being that everything can flow through. All right? And then what's left is beautiful. It's empty. We're getting very Buddhist Zen.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And Lao Tzu, the deep teachings of the Tao. This is the Tao.
Exactly. That's actually one of my favorite chapters too in the Untethered Soul, where you talk about the middle way, right? Because when you either lean to your desire or resist too much, that's the extreme.
That's right.
And this whole thing we're practicing, just releasing and relaxing, and then it normally goes into or back to its most balanced, way.
One of my favorite teachings of the Tao, Lao Tzu, in terms of so many beautiful examples he uses, is he says that the hollowness of the ocean bed is greater than the height of the mountain. The mountain is this big, strong thing, but there's this hollowness in the ocean bed. And why? The water naturally flows off the mountain and goes into the bed. The bed doesn't have to try. The mountain can try to hold on to the water, struggle, but it can't. Everything ends up in the ocean bed, right? So the ocean bed is the natural Tao. It's the natural opening where all of life just naturally comes there. Well, the same thing with you. When you become empty of all this resistance and all this struggling, right? Doesn't mean you're not doing anything. Doesn't mean you don't get anything. It all flows into you.
Wow.
You become what he calls the low, right? You see it? The low area.
Yeah.
It all comes down into that.
That's so beautiful. Miki, I want to ask you perhaps one last question around, because I know, we're having this interview on this beautiful serene ground that you built 50 years ago called Temple of the Universe, and you so graciously open it to people around the world who can come here and, meditate and listen to your talks all for free. And it's just so beautiful. And we, of course, when I say we, I mean me and my 3 other founders, and we wanted to also build a community, but it's online, right? So we wanted to make sure that we have a place for people who are seeking internally and who are sincere seekers, right? Who want to have this spiritual growth. I'm curious, what advice would you have, for people like us, and maybe many more out there who want to start fostering this community-like network to help people build connections and, search internally deeper?
I can only share my experience, right? And the answer is, I didn't do this, okay? Work on yourself. Become the Tao, okay? Become empty. The kind of empty I'm talking about, right? Not that you're empty, not working and so on, right?
Yes.
But inside, you're pure. You've opened up, all right? And it will naturally, what is supposed to take place will take place, okay? Next thing you know, you're attracting people because you're cleaner, right? And then next thing, then they tell someone, and this happens, and that happens, and all of a sudden, this natural unfold, that's the most beautiful it happens, right? And you're not the doer, right? The only thing you're doing is letting go, right? And then serving what's unfolding. And what unfolds is naturally that the beauty of what you create and allow inside of you is going to spread. It's going to open, right? But it's not like you have a concept, I need this and I need that, I need an investor, I need an angel, and I have this, and how do I get this, how do I get the money? It all unfolds naturally, right? And you then stay at peace, right? You're not the doer, you're not struggling, right? You're serving. In the end, all you're doing is serving. Why? Because you don't need anything. You're filled with love. You're filled with joy. You're filled with clarity, right? And you're interacting with every moment in life, okay? And then basically, what is there to do but to give? You don't need anything. You're no longer a taker.
Wow.
And there's no struggle.
Yeah.
Those are the deep teachings, all right? There's just being, serving. Being, serving.
Wow. Being, serving. I'm having an emotional moment right now. I know that's deep teachings, but it's something I feel like it's a deep, deep truth that can be shared by many people, not just two of us here. So, what a moment. Thank you so much, Miki. I just wanted to say, during this month, a little over a month, and Link and I had the opportunity to share, experiences with community, members here, and also be able to just experience you as a person, right? Not just New York Times bestselling author, founder of 2 successful companies. And to me, truly, what humbles me the most is to see how you practice. This is your life's walk, right? You're not just merely discussing this as concepts. You literally walk the path yourself. And you're still living it. And every day, like when you came to the temple, you say hi to people and people ask you, how are you? And you reply ecstatic because you want more than just good, right? And you want all people to feel the joy. And also when, we were in your presence and we were leading the Passover event and, I saw you, you were telling the stories about how Jesus, about to surrender his life, and you became so emotional and tears welled up. And wow, what a moment for me to experience this deep, deep compassion and generosity that you have, not just for the people who come before you, but the vast, vast humanity. And what a treat. I just want to thank you so much for being a role model, and you're a man of commitment, dedication, and above all, of love. And I feel that. I connected with that. So thank you. I'm so grateful.
Well, thank you. And it's true. I would love everybody to be ecstatic. People talk about how do we solve all the problems in the world, politics, this, that, all kinds of stuff, murders, right? Become ecstatic. If everybody is filled with love and joy inside themselves, right, there are not going to be any of these problems, right? And so that's how we go about raising things, raising ourselves. I always say, you change the world 1% at a time. You.
Wow.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you for listening. Thank you for this opportunity to talk to everybody.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you so much, Mickey.